Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the greatest podcast to ever grace the internet. Skill issue. Round of applause, guys.
Oh yeah, episode 3.
We were actually in Saudi Arabia the other day. We got the Prince of Saudi Arabia to really mess with our podcast. He's a fan of Overwatch. He's a grandmaster. So we were out in Saudi, kind of crazy, just doing podcasts and stuff. Mike, what'd you think of the
Great
heat?
guy he is.
Right?
Yeah.
He showed me his Falcon collection.
Yeah, no, it was a wild time in Saudi Arabia. Met some great people. But we're back now, and we're going to somewhere much more refreshing, I would say.
Yeah, what's crazy is we got the motivation to do this episode about Bioshock. That's what we're doing today. When he showed us his underwater city, he actually showed us Atlantis. It's off the coast of Saudi Arabia, believe it or not.
Yeah, you don't want to know who's down there. You actually, like, if the government ever finds out about this, there will be hell to pay.
Shit.
But yeah, we're in deep shit.
Yeah, to continue the podcast, me and Mike both love Bioshock, and we thought it was fitting to make a podcast about it. And I feel like if there's anyone who hasn't played Bioshock, this might be a way to convince them to play it in a way. Because I love this game.
Yeah,
dude. All three.
You called it a must play in your video.
I did. It genuinely is a must play. So let's start at the beginning, Mike. We should start with your first time hearing about Bioshock and then playing it. Where were you in life? What were you thinking? Just give me your rundown.
I was, let's see, it came out in 2007, so I was about 10 or 11 years old, and my dad was playing it on the Xbox in the living room.
Okay.
And I was watching him play it. No idea what the game was. I thought it was just like, I actually thought it was like a movie at first when I saw him, when I saw it on the TV. And then I was like watching him play it, and I remember he was stuck at Fort Frolic is where he was in the game. And like it was taking him, I don't think he ever made it past that part actually, because eventually he put it down and he started playing something else.
Yeah.
But then I played it like a couple of years later when I was a little bit older, because it scared me, honestly.
Yeah.
I was scared to play it the first time
I don't blame
when
you.
I was that young. So I waited until I was like a big, strong 15-year-old to play it.
You were brave.
And I played it, and I just fell in love with it ever since. It's been one of my favorite games. I don't know. I have so much to say about it, which we'll get into, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
For me, it was actually recommended by you. I played it recently.
I know.
I think last year. That was all last year, yeah. I played Infinite first, actually, because I'd played Infinite on 360 when it came out. I don't remember beating it, but I remember getting really far. I remember saving Elizabeth and all of that, but I replayed it recently. I liked Infinite, and then I played 1, and I was like, holy shit, this is so much better than Infinite, and just kind of got absorbed in the entire world. Then played 2 as well. Then me and you just talked about Bioshock for the next couple days, and you told me about the lore and everything. So I was late to the party, but it does hold up today. I actually played the original Bioshock a while ago before I replayed Infinite, but I didn't enjoy it. I kept dying. I couldn't get past the most simple rudimentary puzzles. I think I was just brain dead at the time, and Bioshock was just not the kind of game I was looking for. I think I was playing more like Castle Crashers and Minecraft and dumb shit just back then. But here we are. We've both fully completed Bioshock. We have a lot to say, and I'd like to roll out the red carpet for you to bring us on our Bioshock journey here. How does the first game start, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely. So to start us off, we get a time card that establishes the date and time. We're in the 1960s. It's like the beginning, mid-1960s, above the Atlantic Ocean. We're on a plane, smoking a cigarette as you do.
Nice.
This is back when you could smoke a cigarette anywhere at any time, no matter what. Kind of wish we could go back to that, honestly. But
Right.
yeah, you're on the plane and you have a package in your hand. It says some stuff. You don't really get a good glimpse at it because it flashes quickly. and there's the opening monologue, and then suddenly the plane crashes. You hear like a loud bang. You hear people screaming. The plane goes down, and the title card splashes on Bioshock on the screen.
You're in it.
As you come to, yeah, you're in it. As you come to, you are underwater. You see like a woman's shoe and a purse fly by your face. And you come up to the surface, everything's on fire. You can see the plane going down. And there's a nice, conveniently placed lighthouse.
Right there.
Just chilling.
I wonder how that got there.
So,
But yeah, you swim up to it, you open the door, and immediately you're like, wait, this is not a normal lighthouse. It's got a big
mhm.
statue, golden one of some man. Says, no gods or kings, only man. You go down and you hop in this bathysphere. It's kind of like underwater traversal thingy.
Like
And
a submarine, basically.
yeah, pretty much. And as you submerge deep into the water, a man by the name of Andrew Ryan gives you like, this really cool monologue and one of my favorite intros to a game. It's such a cool way to like teach the player the world early on and what they're about to get into while also teaching you the character behind it, Andrew Ryan. It teaches you a lot about who he is and what he values right off the beginning of the game.
Yeah, you learn a lot about what kind of place you're going to, and then especially as about halfway through his monologue, the panel that you're watching like a slideshow, and the panel that the slideshow is projecting onto drops, and you can see out of the submarine, and you get like this really cinematic view of the city of Rapture. Um, and that's when you realize like, oh, that's like the oh shit moment where you're like, this is like I am not just in like some random like lighthouse. Like this is a whole place.
And to
This is
clarify,
like a civilization.
Rapture is quite literally a massive underwater city. It's got skyscrapers, advertisement plastered everywhere. It really just feels
Hmm.
like a capitalist American city that you'd find, but it is submerged. You have like squids and sharks and fish swimming around.
Hmm.
It's really cool. And I'm sure when it first came out, that was like a huge shock to a lot of people. Seeing a video game city like this was probably really cool.
It feels real. That's the crazy part. Like obviously, we joked about Atlantis at the beginning, but it really feels like what Atlantis would look like if it was real and built in like the
Yep,
1940s or 50s. You
absolutely.
know, it's
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
You enter the city, and what I think's cool about Bioshock is that it starts you off at a visitor's center, like a welcoming area. But,
Hmm.
the city is not in its prime, you quickly realize, because when you arrive, there's a friend there to meet you who tries to rip open the bathysphere and kill you.
He also shanks a guy right in front of you before that. There's
Immediately
a guy
setting the
pleading
tone.
as you pull up, you hear a man pleading for his life, and he's like, "Don't kill me." And then this woman like moves up and she like stabs him in the throat basically, throws him to the side, screams at you, and then starts like digging into the metal sphere. And you're kind of like, "Oh, okay. I think I'm gonna die." And then you hear a nice voice on the radio.
Would you kindly.
Who's on the radio?
It's this guy
Would
named.
you kindly pick up that shortwave radio?
Dude.
I can't do an Irish
I
accent,
loved hearing
but
his voice because he gives you a sense of like the whole time, the entire intro, you're just kind of confused, and once Atlas starts talking to you, a kind of calm washes over. You're like, okay, I have some like direction now. There's like a sense of video game and goals. Atlas starts leading you around, telling you to do stuff, teaching you the basics of what you're about to be getting yourself into. You really don't have any choice but to trust him and follow along what he says. So you just kind of do. He tells you to get weapons, teaches you about like flying machines and hacking, and kind of just guides you through the basics of the game.
mhm. He tells you that his aim is to keep you alive, and later on he tells you that the reason he's trying to help you is because he has a wife and kids that are trapped in the city that he's trying to get out.
You're the only
And,
chance of seeing my wife and child again.
um, yeah, Atlas is a brilliant character for a lot of reasons. What did you think when he first started talking to you? We'll take a break from like the story for a second.
I was one happy because of that sense of relief, like there was kind of direction and sense of things were being
Hmm.
made in a way. I liked his accent, I liked his vibe. I really didn't think too much of him. I just was like, all right, this is the plot. I'm gonna help this guy out. He must have got like trapped in this city and couldn't escape during the fall of it.
Did you mistrust him at all?
No, not really. I thought maybe there was
Yeah.
something suspicious about him, but I didn't think he'd ever cross us or betray us because he's just such a likable dude. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I think and I mean it was designed to be this way, right? But I mean, yeah, it definitely he feels like, you've just come up, you're in this underwater city. Like you've had your mind blown like 3 times, right?
Yeah.
You come into the underwater city, you're out, you survived the plane crash, and then you come up and you see somebody get shanked and you almost get killed yourself by some crazy person. And and this is like the first sane person who's like speaking in any sort of manner that makes sense that you've come across, you know. And it is a very like calming feeling to be like, okay, like I'm not alone here, you know.
Yeah. But
Um
yeah.
and yeah, this whole intro scene is done really well. Um
But this
so
this yeah, this is all just the intro. Gameplay wise, it's really just teaching you the basics of the game, explaining the
mhm,
world and getting you prepared for it. But the first major area that you enter in the game is when you see a Big Daddy for the first time. You're up in like these rafters, you're walking along, you look down and you see a little sister. Someone's trying to hurt her, fuck with her in some way. A little sister is just a little girl. That's all you really know from now. But Atlas is warning you
mhm,
to be very careful, which is odd since it's literally just a child. But you go down to a window, you look through at this little girl getting attacked by a splicer, which is what the civilians of Rapture have turned into.
yeah.
And a Big Daddy shows up to save this little sister. A Big Daddy being one of the coolest enemy designs ever in a video game to me.
Iconic.
They're like these massive underwater like scuba suits. They're really round, heavy. They're equipped with a drill. The lore explains that these things originally helped build Rapture, like they'd be outside constructing and doing whatever. But this Big
Mhm.
Daddy punches the splicer into a wall, then drills him into pieces right in front of you. It's like
Yeah.
horrifying. It was
And
actually
then
really
throws them
scary.
through a window.
Yep, literally right at you.
Yeah.
The first time I saw this, it was genuinely really scary. It
That's the Big Daddy.
like if you're not used to this game on a first time playthrough, it really is scary. Like it feels like a horror game. These things are horrifying, they sound horrifying. The little sisters are super creepy. So then, beyond how
I
creepy the intro is, this like really sets in that like horror aspect of BioShock.
Yeah, I would even say that I would even classify this game as a survival horror game.
Yeah.
Um, because I mean it is a first person shooter, but there's also, I mean, it's creepy, it is scary, and the gameplay involves a lot of resource management.
Yep.
Um, so which is a
Survival
big
based.
trope of survival horror games. So, um, I'm like, I think it's almost more of a survival horror game than just a standard first person shooter.
Yeah, I 100%
And
agree. And that was one of my struggles when I first played it was I was not used to an FPS game that had this. Most FPS games you
mhm.
kind of have bottomless ammo and there's areas where you can collect health. There's really no worry about survival, but in this game they stretch that a lot, which is cool.
Yeah, everything has a cost, right? So you go, like, if you want health, right? You don't just pick up a health pack, right? You can find health packs, but generally you have to buy them or you have to go to a health station, both of which cost money.
Or kill
If you
enemies
want,
spending more resources to then loot them.
right. If you want Adam, to upgrade to get like character upgrades, like upgrade your health or upgrade your Eve, which is basically like a magic bar. Again, we'll get into that whole system. Um, you have to kill the big daddies to get the little sisters, which is a huge, you know,
Ammo
I mean, you
dump,
could you
resource
could
dump.
screw yourself fighting one of those if you're not careful, especially if you're playing on like hard or survivor
Oh yeah,
mode.
they'll destroy you. Yeah,
So,
to get into like the more mechanics of the game, we have to move forward on the actual world. You go into this new room.
yeah.
Yeah, you come across
Um,
this plasmid machine, and Atlas just kind of is
don't
like,
worry now. Your genetic code is being rewritten.
yeah,
Just hold on.
you literally inject yourself with like a
Yeah.
mysterious syringe, and you start actually tweaking out. Atlas is like, no, this is normal. You're good, bro.
hmm
You're
You see
actually,
lightning coming out of your fingers, your veins are lighting up
oh yeah.
blue. And then you fall over a balcony and pass out
Yes,
for an
okay.
undetermined amount of
Yeah,
time.
I'm starting to remember now. Because then, after like you're passed out, a big daddy and little sister come across you. They're like, "Look at this
Yeah.
angel." They kind of talk about you.
Yeah. Then she realizes you're not dead yet, and so she keeps going.
Yep.
And then you get the splicer that's like, this little fish just had his cherry popped.
What's cool about
I
that
love
though
it,
is that
God.
like that's like the realization that these little sisters have value in the world. Like they're offering
hmm
something. They're harvesting dead corpses, and you find out slowly throughout the game. I'll just say it here now. But these
hmm
these little sisters are like the byproduct of Adam, and everyone in Rapture got addicted to Adam, which is what turned them into splicers. It's a drug of
hmm
sort that kind of like gives people powers but can corrupt their mind and bodies in a way. Horrible drug. And
A
the
lot like cocaine, actually.
I
Yeah.
mean Rapture is just full of coke addicts. I guarantee there was cocaine in Rapture at its prime, but
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's objectivism, like,
yeah.
there's no rules.
But pretty cool though, yeah. That you have like these little innocent, not innocent, but like small, easy to kill creatures guarded by these huge protectors, and they're wandering all over Rapture.
Mhm.
And like Mike said, if you kill a big daddy and it's just the little sister left, you can either harvest them for their Adam or save them and still get a bit of Adam. It's like the
You get
first
half as
decision in the
much.
game. You get to choose between being a pacifist or being evil, which I always love when games do. I mean, I'm a big Undertale fan, so obviously, but
Well,
cool
it's
game
more than
design.
that because it's like the game is a critique of objectivism as a whole. I don't know how much you know about objectivism. Um,
Not
so
much.
it's basically the philosophy that if everybody acts in in their own self interest, it's actually better for society.
That's
Uh,
similar to how capitalism
so
works.
it's like it's kind of, but
Yeah,
it's like there's no regulation, right? Like
yeah.
that's the belief with objectivism is that regulation is like a hindrance.
Which is what Andrew
So
Ryan wanted his city to be. I see, because he didn't
yeah,
want like.
Andrew Ryan is a parody of the real life person named Ayn Rand, who is the one who kind of like coined the term objectivism. She was like a German philosopher in I think the early 1930s or 40s. And so the city Rapture is like objectivism taken to its logical conclusion, right? Where you have an entire city with no regulation, where everybody is encouraged to just do whatever furthers their own interest. The little sister dilemma is that concept given to the player because it is in your best interest to harvest the little sister and get more Adam. But like you have to accept the moral problem that you're killing a child to do it.
Yeah,
So it is really like it is a smart way to do a moral decision because it ties into the actual theme and overall like um, tone of the game.
100%. And these are trademarks of a good game. When games have this much detail and like effort put into these things, you can tell that the team cared a lot about it. And if the team cares about a game, I'm much more willing to care about it. There's an alternate world where Bioshock was just kind of shit out, where it was just pretty basic FPS game. You just walk through corridors, kill stuff, but they put layers here, which I love to see.
Mm. Have you
Just
ever
love
heard
to
of
see it.
System Shock, by the way? Not to go off on a tangent,
I don't
but
think so.
System Shock is the predecessor to Bioshock. Um, that was released in, I believe, either the late '90s or early 2000s. You should play it just to see if you're since you're I know
Yeah.
you're a huge Bioshock fan. Um, Because that game has a lot of the same concepts as Bioshock, but it was very limited by like the technology at the time. So you go through so you get the plasmid, right? And you can shoot lightning out of your hands, which is
Bioshock
crazy.
has magic in it, dude.
It is basically magic. It is basically magic.
The lore explains
But
it
it's
as
atom
like
and
science and atom, yeah, but it's
it's a drug basically.
yeah. But I think this
Um,
system brings Bioshock to a really cool place gameplay wise. Because the guns alone, you're gonna get a mountain of guns in Bioshock, but the plasmids change entirely how you tackle issues, how you fight big daddies, how you clear rooms, and they're also just fun to use. Like throwing bees at people is really epic.
oh yeah, the plasmids are bring a whole nother dimension to the combat. They give you so many options to go about every situation. Like the classic example is the first big boss fight against Dr. Steinman. You know, you have like the pool of water that you can electrify if he walks in it. There's an oil slick on the ground that you can light on fire with the fire plasmid. There's explosive barrels you can throw at him with telekinesis. You know, like there's so many options for how you play that fight. You can hack the security around him. You know, it's really like designed well.
Gives the player a lot of freedom. Half Life is one of my favorite games, and there's like a little bit of variety on how you can tackle situations, but by and large, there's like a way you have to do something and you do it to progress. But Bioshock does not have that. Yes, there's puzzles that you have to do a specific thing, but combat wise and boss fight wise, like you said, it's just complete freedom to
Hmm.
the player, which makes it a lot more immersive. But
Yeah,
anyway,
and a lot more memorable. Yeah.
100%.
I was just gonna say the plasmids can combo with each other as well, and they can combo with your weapons. Like there's one plasmid that lets you freeze people, and if you hit them with the wrench, which is your melee weapon, they actually take more damage while they're frozen. Which makes sense, like logically.
Because you're breaking apart
Uh,
that ice instead of just putting
right,
holes in it.
right, and you know, so you can, or there's the 1-2 punch that Atlas teaches you at the beginning, where you shock them zap him and whack him, I think is what he says.
Yeah.
So yeah, the bees, like you said, is really cool. My favorite one actually is there's a plasmid called Cyclone Trap, where you can put like a little tornado trap on the ground, and if somebody walks into it, they get blasted into the air,
That's all. Then you can just
and they
shoot
take
them
like
like.
massive fall damage. And you can shoot them while they're just like flying through the air. It's really fun to use.
That's the basics of the gameplay. Future Bioshock games all follow this formula. This is the Bioshock gameplay formula. You also have looting. These maps are generally pretty maze like. It's easy to get lost in them. You do have a map, but you can explore Rapture to your heart's content, and you're rewarded
Hmm.
for it through the stuff that you loot, the safes that you hack. Um,
Right? You always need more ammo. You always need more first aid kits. You always need more Eve. So, you know, there is, like I said, that aspect of resource management
which
where you're
also
constantly like,
incentivizes exploration.
yeah, absolutely. You don't want to run out of ammo. There's also like, we haven't really talked about it, but there are like passive powers that you can get too, kind of like plasmids, but they're just like buffs. They're called tonics. That you can, and most of those are found by exploring the optional areas. You go through this introduction area, you get introduced to the world, which it does a really good job of introducing you to the world. And then at the end, you're confronted by Andrew Ryan himself, who now knows that you're in his city. And he thinks you're like either an agent sent by the CIA or the KGB. And he basically tells you that you don't have long, like he's gonna find you and kill you.
Which
And then you escape
I
to the medical
personally
pavilion.
I personally loved that scene because it made Andrew Ryan real. He's more than just the face of the city and like the mastermind behind
Hmm.
everything. That's like the first time you find out that he's still alive. Like you had no idea if he was alive, existed, or was a real person, but this confirms that.
He's still alive, and he's obviously not the same person as who was talking to you in that intro scene.
He
right?
fell along with the
And he's
city.
not the I'm Andrew Ryan and I'm here to ask you. Now he's like the first thing he says to you, he says, "Which one of the bitches sent you? The CIA wolf or the KGB jackal?" Yeah, he's a really well-written character. Um, but yeah, you escape and you make it to the medical pavilion. The first real level of the game.
And
Um,
this part is pretty creepy. I think hospitals are used in horror games a lot, but in Bioshock, there's like this sense of like people being experimented on. Like this wasn't just a place for wellness. Like this was a horrible hospital to be in, I'm sure.
yeah, no, I really like Medical Pavilion because I think it does a really good job of pulling you in. Like the first level, the introductory like tutorial level introduces you to the world and sets the tone for the game. Um,
Absolutely.
Medical Pavilion, I feel, is what makes you get lost in it. You know, it's what makes you really feel. First of all, it makes the city feel more real, right? Like not only is it a medical area where there's doctors' offices, there's like three different competing doctors in the space of like one plaza,
Yeah.
which is really funny. But there's also like there's vending machines all over the place, all over the place. There's like advertisements on all the walls. There's a dentist's office that's having like a sale on a plasmid, which is really funny. Uh, and you can also tell that this place is falling apart physically, as well as, not just like society's gone mad, but also like physically, like there's water leaking in from everywhere,
Yeah.
because nobody is maintaining it.
It's
Yeah.
this level of detail that convinces you that this place is real. Like no one but the game
Mm-hmm.
developers are going to be able to like convince you or draw you in, and they realize that crazy world building, attention to detail in the setting, and like you said, making this place feel like somewhere that humans actually lived. There's restaurants, there's
Mm-hmm.
hospitals like we see in this section. Pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, so you get to the medical pavilion, and the reason you're here is because Atlas has told you that his family is in Neptune's Bounty, which is like a kind of like an fishing area. It's where they get a lot of their food from. And but Andrew Ryan has locked down the entrance to Neptune's Bounty from the visitor center, which is where you were originally. So, you have to go through the medical pavilion. So you go to unlock the path from medical to Neptune's Bounty, and it gets locked down by Dr. Steinman. Seth, what do you think about Dr. Steinman?
He is batshit crazy. What I liked about Steinman was that this game has a ton of like audiobooks and audio logs.
Hmm.
And like we said earlier, through these things you can see the past of Rapture and then, compare it to the gameplay, which is the current state of it now. And you get to see that these people, even though they turned crazy from the fall of Rapture and the addiction of Adam, most of these people previously, before the fall of Rapture, were already insane and already not very great people. Rapture being kind of separated from world governments and like all the drawbacks of having to organize things and keep things legal were not as enforced down here. So people like Steinman got away with a lot of very terrible shit.
Oh yeah, so Steinman is a cosmetic surgeon who is also a perfectionist. So great
Oh yeah.
combination right off the bat there. Um, and once he started using Adam to kind of enhance his cosmetic surgery, he became obsessed with symmetry. And most people in real life have asymmetric faces, right?
Yeah.
So he that kind of drove him insane, and he basically became like Picasso, but with a human face, where he was trying to make like a perfect symmetrical face. And he ended up just killing people on the operating table, which is funny because cosmetic surgery is like not super dangerous, I don't
Yeah.
think. And yeah, he just went insane and he started treating people like they were art canvases.
Just Frankenstein
Uh,
and people.
yeah, he was having visions where he was speaking to the Greek goddess Aphrodite. Um, And this is who has the key that you need to progress. So we got to go find him.
Lovely.
Yeah, no, Steinman has no interest in letting you leave his office in one piece.
Yeah.
When you get there, he's like slashing away at people, um, and he screams that you're ugly and starts blasting you with a machine gun. And but you kill him, and you get the key off of him, and Atlas tells you to go back and put the key in so you can finally get to Neptune's bounty.
Save his
But
family.
before, yeah, to save his family. But before you get back, on your way back, there's a tunnel collapse, which Atlas points out is like something that's happening all over the city, and it takes you down this detour where you see a dead Big Daddy, and uh, you see a splicer approaching a little sister before he gets popped from a character out of view. And you look up and you see Dr. Tenenbaum. This is your introduction to this character,
Oh my
who is
gosh.
another person who's not totally batshit insane. Um, and yeah, I really like this scene where she basically pleads with you not to kill the girl. Atlas says that it's not a girl anymore, it's a monster, and that you need the atom to survive. Um, and she tells you that if you save her, she'll somehow find a way to make it worth your while.
Which she does.
And then you're presented with the choice.
You can either
So,
harvest the little sister, like we said earlier, or just rescue them. When I played through, just rescued all of them because you still get some kind of atom and you end up getting gifts from the little sisters, so it kind of evens
mhm,
out the further into the game you go. But you don't know
yeah,
that on your first playthrough. You literally
no,
have no idea. So it's genuinely just a test of moral integrity.
yeah, it's again that objectivism thing where it's like, that Atlas is probably right. Like, you need the atom to survive, but like, do you want to kill this girl for it?
And
You know?
Tenenbaum's a cool character because you can tell she actually cares about these girls, like all the little sisters. She does have a spot in her heart
Mhm.
for, but is also kind of responsible for the way that they've become.
She's the one who created them. She's
Yeah,
actually one of the people who discovered Adam in the first place.
they found it in
Um,
sea slugs, right?
it was originally in sea slugs. Yeah. So not to go on a super long lore tangent, but yes, it was originally in sea slugs. And then they found out that the slug contained the atom. But the slug doesn't last very long. Um, and so in order to harvest Adam, right, they need the slug to have a host that can live longer. And so they ended up finding out that it basically forms a parasitic relationship with children, um,
The perfect
through some
vessel.
pretty fucked up testing. And yeah, after some mental conditioning and a little bit of genetic enhancement, bada bing, bada boom, you got the little sister. Um, but to get the atom, you have to get the slug. And to pull the slug out of the little sister will kill her because they're like symbiotic with each other.
Yeah.
So, and she's responsible for that. So, she obviously feels guilty about it now. She's like kind of a tragic character in a sense.
Yeah.
Um, but she is also the one that created them, which Atlas is quick to point out. So, but you make your choice, and then you go to Neptune's bounty.
And
And yeah, do you have anything else you want to say about medical or just anything about the beginning of the game?
I'll say at this point in the game, I was just more excited to figure out more lore, and I really just wanted to meet Atlas. Like, that was my biggest thing at this point. I was like, I want to meet Atlas. I want to link up with this guy. And I was
Mm-hmm.
I was excited to save his family because, like I said, I liked him, I trusted him, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be like the first point in the game where I make like a big impact on the world. So I was
Mm-hmm.
excited to just keep pushing.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because Neptune's bounty is the first instance where you get a little bit of a shadow of a doubt casted on Atlas.
Oh yeah.
Um, so Neptune's Bounty is where you learn about another really kind of important character to the story, a guy named Frank Fontaine.
Oh.
Um, Basically, he owned a the fishery here is the main attraction of Neptune's Bounty, and he was also running a smuggling operation out of it. Yeah, which Andrew Ryan eventually found out, and at this point he is believed to be dead. You meet when you go through the fisheries to get to where you have to go through the Fontaine fisheries to get to where Atlas's family is. The door to get there is locked down by a guy named Peach Wilkins. Do you remember this guy behind the door?
It just hollers at you through
Um,
it. Yeah, I do
yeah,
remember.
he hollers at you, but he says that you have the smell of Atlas on you. And he
Suspicious.
says he finds it odd. He talks about how it's odd that Fontaine disappeared and Atlas suddenly came out of nowhere. Atlas tells you that he's just an old man jumping at ghosts. Um, yeah, kind of is the first I think the first real time where you're supposed to stop and kind of think about like who Atlas actually is. And obviously you don't have an answer. Like the game doesn't give you an answer, but you are supposed to, kind of think
Yeah,
about what is
there's
this guy
a
talking
mystery
about?
here now.
But again, like you don't really have a reason to distrust him, you know.
He hasn't given you one.
Um, and this guy is like also tries to kill you later on. So, you know, maybe like, you can chalk it up to like maybe this guy is also just insane. But story-wise, nothing super interesting happens in Neptune's Bounty.
It's mostly what
Um,
happens at the end,
yes.
where
So,
when you arrive,
you can go ahead.
to save Atlas's family, they are in a bathysphere. That's what he tells you, right? Like you're looking at this bathysphere, they're inside of it, and they're
Hmm.
prepared to leave. And then,
You can actually see him down there.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
the entire thing just kind of because of Andrew Ryan ends up falling apart, getting crumbled or attacked, right?
Yeah. So it blows up. It actually blows up.
Oh, Andrew Ryan
Um,
just blows it up.
well, so what happens is, you slap the button to let Atlas in, and he's like, "Oh, I can't see you up there." You can hear him screaming to his family. Meanwhile, Andrew Ryan is taunting you over the speaker, and then, he says, your poor friend. If only you could do something to help him. And then, uh, Atlas starts screaming at you to get out because there's splicers coming in everywhere. You fight your way down to the sub, and as you get down there, it blows up, and you see like rubble, debris, fire goes everywhere. You hear Atlas scream. Um, and then Andrew Ryan at this point has figured out that you're not from a government organization.
Yeah.
And he's now interested in who you are. Um, and uh, Atlas tells you to get out and get to Arcadia, which is the next area.
I
Um,
like Arcadia.
and yeah, you're kind of hit with that gut punch where his family is dead.
And Atlas is
Um,
actually just in shambles.
yeah, he's like sobbing. He's like, Jesus Christ. Yeah, so Arcadia is the nature preserve of Rapture. It's where all the trees grow that produce the oxygen. Again, the attention to detail here in this game, like the city's underwater. They have to get oxygen from somewhere. Um,
Yep.
so I think it's like a lot of games wouldn't even bother like showing you or telling you where that comes from because you're just expected to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah.
Um, but this game doesn't. This game gives you an explanation, which doesn't like make a lot of sense, but it makes sense in with the rules of the world. So, you
100%.
know, and it's very pretty. Also, it's very visually a very nice
It's like
change
the
of pace from
first
everything else that
greenery
you've
you
seen.
ever see. You got like the walls covered in flowers and vines and like this
Hmm.
water running through you, like walking next
Yeah,
to
there's like a
rivers and
river.
stuff.
There's a waterfall. Um,
It's
yeah.
really
Sorry, I
pretty.
didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay. There's a ton of pretty secrets here too, and like hidden rooms and stuff. I think the exploration in this game is done really well and doesn't get enough credit. Like there is a lot to explore, and like I said, it does feel like a maze in this
Hmm.
game sometimes.
Yeah, this area is actually a great example of that because you can actually find several like little caves where there's a that are were being used by a cult of splicers that actually worship the plants. Like they drink chlorophyll, which is an extract from
Bro.
plants. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like they've just been underwater so long that they view the trees as gods, which is like crazy. Of course, they're also like mentally insane, but
I love listening to Splicer
um,
dialogue, bro. It reminds me of like the bandits from Borderlands, just hearing like the most obscene shit come out of their mouths.
yeah. What's your favorite splicer dialogue that you can think of off the top of your head?
I like at the like near the beginning of the game where there's like a splicer who has like a baby cradle and like she's talking to the child and like
Oh yeah.
giving it like sweet nothings that are also like evil, and you walk over and it's just a gun in a fucking baby
That's where
stroller.
you get the revolver, yeah.
Yeah. What's yours?
My my favorite is the one where the guy is like just walking around and he's singing the Jesus Loves Me song.
Yeah.
That one's really good. That used to always terrify me as a child when I played it when I was younger. I don't know why, but like just walking around and then hearing a crazy guy sing Jesus loves me, like I
Yeah.
don't know, it just like it triggered something in my brain.
This game's scary. Dude, talking about this makes me want to play it again.
I
But
know. I was actually thinking of playing it after this episode.
dude, I'll watch you. But yeah, Andrew Ryan obviously, since he has eyes everywhere, finds out that you're here, and even though this would affect him directly, decides to try to kill all the trees in Arcadia and just stop the flow of oxygen in Rapture.
Yeah. So even Atlas is like kind of surprised that he would go this far. He says, he says like no trees. No, he actually says like give me a second to think.
Yeah,
Um, and he sends you to find a woman named Julie Langford, who is one of the scientists who actually kind of created Arcadia, and was able to get the trees to grow underwater in the first place.
yeah,
Um, so you send it to her because she's gonna want to save the trees because they're her trees. She gives you like a fetch quest to find something, and then you bring it back to her. She's actually like another character that's not totally gone. Um, which is kind of surprising that there's so many of them, but
holding on to
um,
what sanity they have left.
yeah. But then Andrew Ryan finds out that she's helping you, and so he gasses her. Um, which is kind of
Oh, that's the
insane.
scene where like you see her write the code on the window as she dies.
Yeah, the code to her safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had a business deal, you and I, did we not? And Andrew Ryan.
Yeah.
Um, so basically, she was working on this thing called the Lazarus vector, which could make the trees live forever. Um, and her dying act is she gives you the recipe to create it. Um, so that way you can bring the trees back to life.
Really sweet of her, honestly. She didn't have to do that.
Well, I don't think she has any love for Andrew Ryan anymore.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, so you go to a little, not really a side area because it is mandatory, but it doesn't go any further than that. You go to the farmers market, um, which is a neat little area.
Isn't it like the big overgrown place with all the signs set up and you can go into like each shop?
Yeah, there's like a winery
Yeah, I
and
remember that area.
there's the bee the bee place.
Yeah, and that's where you get the bee
Um,
plasmid.
mm-hmm. And uh yeah, there's like a couple other little shops. There's like market stalls you can see that are set up all over the place. But yeah, you collect all the ingredients, then you go back and you have kind of like a wave defense style situation
Yep.
um, in the lab while the Lazarus vector is created. And then you release the vector, which is like some chemical agent into the air, and it brings the trees back to life, so you don't suffocate and die.
Andrew Ryan has been spoiled again.
Yeah. And then you move on to Fort Frolic, and Atlas tells you you're approaching Ryan's house himself, so you're getting close. And I know you really like the character in this area, Seth, so I'll let you talk
Yes.
about Fort Frolic.
Fort Oh my god, Fort Frolic, when you walk into it, reminds me of a mall a little bit at first. Like, it seems like this big hub with a lot of different areas that you can go to, obviously giving you a ton of exploration. But this isn't like an empty place. There's someone that kind of owns this like commercial hub, or like rules it now in the Fall of Rapture. You get introduced to him right through like this big intro sequence where like there's all these masks and like these lights, and you hear him talking over a speaker. That's the beginning, right? Like before you enter the
Yep.
area.
So he actually cuts out your radio. Atlas is in the middle of saying something to you, and then it fades into static, and then he comes on the radio, and he says, he starts mocking Atlas. Atlas Ryan. Atlas Ryan. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And but yeah. Anyway, you can continue.
After you enter
hmm
Fort Frolic, you meet the guy here who's running everything, Sander Cohen, right?
Sander Cohen.
He's this guy that's obsessed with like musical art and theater, and loves photographs, is generally just pretty insane, and he wears this mask that I really like. It's like this bunny kind of thing. I'm sure mocking the Playboy bunny kind of aesthetic and stuff like that. But yeah, this guy's
hmm
batshit insane, and you kind of just run around all of Fort Frolic. You collect things, upgrades, normal Bioshock gameplay, but you also have to get photographs. It introduces like the film and photograph side of Bioshock, which is admittedly not its best mechanic, but it is pretty cool seeing it tied in lore wise here and having to take photos for this guy to create a mural that he wants you to
Yeah.
finish.
You actually have to take photos for Peach Wilkins and Neptune's Bounty too. That's where you get the camera.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but this guy, so Sander Cohen, like you said, is an artist. He was actually famous on the surface before he even came to Rapture. Um, and he is insane. He's also a perfectionist. Um, and what he's having you do is go around and actually kill his own apprentices that he feels have failed him. Um, so that way you can take pictures of their corpses and give them to him so that he can make a mural out of them.
Yes, yes, yes. The mural part's
Completely
actually
twisted.
pretty cool. It's like all these statues and stuff, with like these slots for the photos. It's kind of cool.
Those are not statues.
Oh yeah, they're people. Can you explain this to me? Because I never understood. Throughout this entire section, you find like these
hmm
statues of people, like some at tables, eating, some in the process of painting, but they're all like full white and like solid and frozen. Like, what caused
They're
that?
plastered.
He covers them in plaster. Like, did he go
They're
around
corpses. They're corpses. So if you smack them with the wrench or shoot them, you'll see
blood?
blood come out of them.
Yep.
And they're actually corpses. So they're people that he, or assuming his apprentices have killed. And then he covers them in plaster so that he can pose their bodies even after rigor mortis wears off.
This guy has serious mental issues.
Yeah, and so he basically kills people and turns their bodies into art pieces.
Which is honestly
Um,
like horrifyingly beautiful, bruh.
yeah, this level I think nails the horror survival horror aesthetic really well because it's the first level where Atlas is not with you.
Yep.
Also,
This is a solo
um,
venture.
this is just you and Mr. Cohen.
Yeah.
So
But after you collect all the pieces, Cohen then does like this big theatrical entrance with like little fireworks popping off. There's a spotlight on him. He's
mhm,
walking down a stage, just chatting
yeah,
shit. You just kind of have to stand there and watch
hmm
his whole thing go down. And
yeah.
you can fight him, but I believe you have the option to not. Like, you can spare him and keep him alive, right?
Yeah, he actually tells you like he's after you do what he wants you to do, he tells you that the way is open and you can leave. And you can leave.
Or you kill him for his key and open up his chest.
Right. Um,
I killed him
he
the first
actually,
time
if
because I wanted to see what was in that chest really bad. It was kind of mid, but
if you don't kill him, he actually shows up later in the game.
yep.
Um, which we'll
I
get
guess
to that later. But
yeah. I guess unless there's any more to say, we could segue into the next part.
yeah, we're coming up on the big reveal. I just want to say Fort Frolic is also my favorite area in the game.
It's just really cool.
Um,
It's like everything that's cool about the Bioshock world, like mushed into one place.
yeah, the aesthetic is really good. And you are right, it is basically a mall, or like an entertainment center.
Which is cool
You
because
know,
this area of the game has like more windows than almost any other area in the game. Like you get to see outside and all the other advertisement. Like you could tell that this
hmm
was a huge business hub. Like Rapture was all about like the real capitalism of the world. Billboards, advertisement. It's pretty cool that there's so many windows to let you see the city in this part.
yeah. And even within Fort Frolic itself, there's like a huge variety of like there's like a strip club, there's casinos, there's like clothing shops, there's art shops, there's the theater itself, which is like a big like auditorium. Um, it is really again, it's just another one of those areas that makes the city feel real,
Yeah.
you know. Um, yeah, and Sander Cohen is a really interesting character. Um, the way he almost talks like nonsensically, like you have to kind of decipher what he's actually saying.
Yeah.
Um, and again, just it is does nail how comforting Atlas has been this whole time because it feels really unsettling not having him talk to you the whole time.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, we can transition to the next area, which is called Hephaestus.
And this is
Which
this is
is
where the reveal happens, right?
yeah. So this is Hephaestus is the core of Rapture. It's kind of like the engineering center, where all of the city's control systems are. Um, so not really like a civilian area.
Nah.
Um, it's more of like
An
where like the
underbelly.
automatic cameras and the doors and the oxygen control and everything is. And Andrew Ryan's office is also in Hephaestus. So basically, again, the story in Hephaestus is not super in depth. It's basically just you have to create like an EMP
A bomb.
to to shut down Ryan's security system so you can actually get into his office. And the whole time he's basically just mocking you. You're going back and forth between him and Atlas. You kind of get the feeling. I do like that outside of his office are all the people hung on the pillars, which are all the people that have tried to overthrow him previously and failed.
Yeah.
Um, he even says at one point that you're gonna make a nice addition to the wall, uh, which
Like
is really
monsters.
funny.
Dude,
But yeah, so you bust in and you get into his office. He goes on a big monologue that's really aimed at Atlas, not at you. Um, he says, "You can kill me, but you won't have my city." And everything starts flashing red. And alarms are going off. Like you don't know what he's done, but he turned off the wrong switch. You
yeah.
know, and so you crawl through like a vent, and you fall into this room. With well, do you want to talk about the room?
Yeah, when I crawled into this room for the first time, I was a little confused. It's almost like the scribblings of a madman. Like it looks like one of those things with like a bunch of pins and like string connected, like this big conspiracy thing. And there's this text that says, "Would you kindly?" Which is what Atlas says to you throughout the whole game. You never really think about it. Like to you, it's just manners. Like he's just being sweet. Like, would you kindly do this, this?
Yeah, it's just a
But
speech mannerism.
this moment
Yeah.
in the game is another moment where you have to question Atlas, and this obviously shows that there's other people that have talked to Atlas at the very least. Like, there's people that know of him, know that he says this, but there's an audio tape you can pick up that kind of shows the scientific research on, like, kind of like sleeper agent words, like using code phrases. They were studying these things to try to mind control people. If you use your context clues here, you can kind of see a picture piecing together, but nothing for sure. But when you confront Andrew
Mm.
Ryan, I think is obviously the nail in the head on that. Do you want to talk about the meeting of Andrew Ryan, like when we enter his office?
Yeah. So you walk into Ryan's office, and he's playing golf behind the window. Um, and he's actually very cordial here. Um, Probably because, in my opinion, he's come to terms with his own death. And because he's figured out who you are.
Yeah.
At this point. Um, and he talks about you know, what separates a man from a slave is the big speech.
Yeah.
This is one of the most infamous speeches in all of video game history. Um,
A
like one of the
man
most famous villain
chooses, a
speeches.
slave
Yeah. He says,
obeys.
"Was a man sent to kill or a slave?" He says, "You think you have memories, and you see the pictures that have these pictures have kind of been flashing in front of your eyes while you've been playing, of like your family and like this farmhouse and the scene from the beginning where you're sitting on the plane." He says, "You think you have memories?" Um, and he says, "Was that plane?" He says, "Did that plane crash or was it hijacked?" And then you see the box that you were holding on the plane is open and there's a pistol in it. And the note that I was talking about at the beginning that's on the box says, "Would you kindly not open until, and it has a set of latitude and longitude coordinates, which is where the lighthouse is." He keeps going on and saying, he says, "Would you kindly?" He says, "Would you kindly?" And you actually lose control of your character here. And he asks you if the phrase is familiar, and you hear Atlas saying it over and over again. And he starts basically treating you like a dog. He says, "Stop, turn, run, stand, kneel."
Yeah.
And then he says, "Kill," and he hands you the golf club he's playing with. And you beat him over the head with it while he repeatedly says, "A man chooses and a slave obeys."
It's brutal to watch him die here too. Even though Andrew Ryan's like horrible, like his resolve in this moment is kind of like saddening. Like he's just screaming this over and over again while he's beat to death, choking on his blood, but he never like falters or begs. Like he takes his death in stride almost.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, you also have to remember he wants you. He's actually trying, in my opinion, he's actually trying to break you out of it
Yeah.
because remember Andrew Ryan's whole thing is self agency, right?
Yeah.
That he's an objectivist, that every man should be free to do what they want. So for him to be killed by a person who has no agency is
Yeah.
actually like incredibly ironic,
Yeah.
and also probably his worst nightmare.
I never thought about that. That him like repeating that line is trying to get you to like be yourself and break from the chains of this.
I don't know if that's true. That's why he says it. That's like
It could
headcanon,
be interpreted,
but
yeah.
it could be interpreted, yeah.
But yeah, no, you
So you
murder him.
yeah, you kill him. I mean, you don't have a choice. He's telling you to do it. And then Atlas asks you if you would kindly grab his genetic key, which I think is the icing on the cake. Is the first thing Atlas says to you after killing him is, "Would you kindly?"
And you do grab the genetic key. And don't you do it to fix like the emergency like shutdown thing that Ryan put in place?
Yes. And you also do it to give control of the city over to Atlas, or I guess we should say his real name now.
Oh yeah, he
Uh,
reveals
who is
himself in this moment to to not be Atlas. Atlas doesn't exist.
No, this is actually Fontaine, the man who Ryan went to war with not too long before you arrived. Um, and he basically just had you do all this, so that you would come to Rapture and hand control of the city to him, so that he could have all the Atom for in the city for himself.
And then this raises the question of, well, what's your correlation with Fontaine? Like, where did you really come from? Ryan was talking about all these memories being fake and that you're nothing but a slave. So does Fontaine own you? Did he create you? This is what I was thinking during this moment of the game. Like, who are we truly now? We figured out the truth of
Yeah,
who Fontaine is, the truth of Ryan, but are we just a vessel, or do we have like a standing in the lore here?
yeah, you can actually figure it out if you pay attention to the audio logs throughout the game and throughout the whiteboard at the end, or the conspiracy board
Yeah.
with all the photos on it. Um, the game is very obviously leading you towards the answer. Um, I don't know if you want to say it now or later. Um,
I'm done to just say it
but
now.
yeah, so you play as Andrew. Your character is not just some random nobody who like crashed on a plane. Um, you are actually Andrew Ryan's illegitimate son.
Nuts.
Uh, yeah. So Andrew Ryan had a one night stand with a stripper. Um, and
Oh, I remember going
uh,
into that room and listening to the audio.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, the room is in Fort Frolic where you can see um the ghost of what is essentially your mother.
Yeah.
Um, like crying in her bedroom. Um, and yeah, so Andrew Ryan got this girl pregnant. Um, and she sold the child to Fontaine and Tenenbaum. Um, and then they brainwashed you from a very young age, using the "would you kindly sleeper agent" phrase, as you put it. I
Yeah.
like that terminology. Um, and basically sent you up to the surface with plans to bring you back once everything kicked off, so that Fontaine could take control of the city.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a whole thing. Um, but it's not exactly hidden from you. Like there, once
Yeah.
you realize it, you're like, oh,
And
and you
once
have this really big moment where everything that you've heard up until this point makes sense.
and it then pushes us to an interesting point. If Andrew Ryan is defeated, the big bad of the world, what do we do about
Why aren't the
Fontaine?
credits rolling?
Yeah. And you end up in the not hands of Tenenbaum. Well, kind of. She in a way saves you and helps like dampen the mind control that Fontaine has on you. And
Hmm.
then this final stretch of the game is defeating Fontaine, your master, this evil dude who, if he got control of Rapture, I'm sure would not run it any more squeaky clean than Ryan was at this point.
No. So Ryan at least had a vision for what he wanted Rapture to look like. Fontaine is actually just a selfish man. He
Yeah.
was not even one of the people that Ryan invited to Rapture. He actually snuck in.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So but Tenenbaum does undo the parts that lets him directly control you, and then you go and free yourself from what's left. And then you basically just track him down to kill him.
And you find out actually that one, he sees you in a way kind of as a son. Like he has like a weird
Hmm.
soft spot in his heart for you, not enough to not murder you in cold blood though. But
Right.
two, that he has been jacking himself up with Adam, like making himself an absolute beast, dude. Like,
Yeah. He actually, funny enough, looks like Atlas from real life.
yep.
The guy with the world on his shoulders.
Yep. Ends up like
Um,
this big Greek
yeah,
goddess or god.
yeah.
But I also want to say, in this like final stretch segment where you're planning on killing Fontaine, you actually start to become a big daddy. Not in like a real legitimate term, but you start like piecing together a suit. I think this is the whole section of the game where you explore the Little Sisters area, right? Like the entire area where they were like kept and everything.
Yeah, yeah. So this final stretch of the game takes place in the apartment section where most of the people in Rapture lived. Um, this is where actually, if you leave Sander Cohen alive, he's actually in his apartment here, um, and you can see him again.
And enter his room.
Um, and you can enter his room and interact with him. Um, but everybody lived here. There's but also the Little Sister orphanage is here, which was run by Fontaine, interestingly enough,
Yeah.
and was actually an op to basically capture children.
Yeah, wouldn't they go to
It
the
was on the
surface and like scoop them up?
no, well, no. So that's a Bioshock 2 plot point.
Oh, my bad.
Um, yeah. So what happened is like the orphanage was used as a front so that people who like didn't want their kids would bring them to the orphanage. Um,
Uh,
and it was advertised like, oh, this is a great place. You drop them off, we'll raise them. And behind the scenes, they were turned into little sisters
and genetically paired with big daddies.
and slugs. Yes. So,
Pretty horrifying.
um,
This whole section was really sad. It's kind of uncanny, like going through each of the girls' rooms. You can find different audio
mhm.
tapes of them. It's genuinely a really sad section. Pretty creepy too, but I remember just being
Yeah.
pretty sad. But I did like the apartment like levels of this game. I loved the areas where it was like these train sections with the big glass like domes around it where you could see outside.
hmm
It's a cool section.
Yeah. You get to see Fontaine's apartment as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, but yeah, you chase him down. You do kind of turn yourself into a big daddy a little bit so that the little sisters will listen to you because you need them to get to Atlas.
Yeah.
Um, and then, um, and then you get to him and you take him out. You basically just suck him to death.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to leave that in.
No, no, I'm down to leave it because even
But that
after the
is
big
that is
fight,
what
yeah, the little
happens.
sisters just start
Yeah.
stabbing him like they're
Yeah.
little thingies.
I showed you what you was capable of.
And
Yeah.
depending on if you harvested little sisters or were sweet to them, you can get two endings to this game. The only difference is really being the final cutscene. Um, but if you did get the good ending and defeated Fontaine, there's this big final battle segment where you're getting ready to go on this bathysphere and escape with the little sisters. You're holding shit down as everything's crumbling around you. You get to the surface and you get this really sweet cutscene that I'm pretty sure Tenenbaum narrates, right?
Yes, Tenenbaum narrates it. Um, yeah, you come to the surface and you know, they basically you bring all the little sisters up with you, who have now been cured, so that they have a chance at like a real life.
Yeah.
And they grow up and you get to see them like get married and graduate from school and everything. And then the last scene is where it cuts to you on your deathbed, and you're surrounded by all the little sisters that you saved, who are now adults, and they all hold your hand as you die.
So sweet.
Um, and it's like you've created your own family, since your real family was a bunch of psychopaths.
But what about the
So,
evil ending, Mike?
have you ever gotten the evil ending,
No, but I've
or did
seen
you
it on
look it up?
YouTube. I looked it up, yeah.
The evil ending is really funny. The evil ending is basically you take all the Adam in the city for yourself, and basically do what Fontaine was gonna do. So you go up to the surface with an army of splicers, uh, and continuing, and just do like implied reprehensible stuff.
to the surface
Um,
world, like actually just
yeah, it's not quite explained fully what the consequences of those actions are, but it's not good.
yeah, and it's
You
not the
know, you've
true
seen what
ending
the
either.
splicers are like, and you know that they do not belong on the surface. So,
Pretty cool. And that's a
um,
closed book on Bioshock. What did you think when you first finished Bioshock, Mike? What were your emotions? What were your thoughts?
I was really happy, honestly. I felt sad that it was over, but I felt like I really was rewarded for taking my time and going through the game. You know, paying attention to the audio logs and you know, the environmental storytelling that's all over the place.
It's one of those games
Um,
that like when you finish, you just kind of have to sit there for a minute and just take it all in.
yeah, yeah, you do. You sit and you process like what just happened, and what you just played, and I think in a good way. You know, like you sit there and you're like, you keep thinking about it, like, oh man, so that's why, you know, blah blah blah. Like,
Yeah.
you know, just all the little details, like the fact that like there's some random audio log that talks about how the Vita chambers, which are where you revive when you die, and the bathyspheres are locked, so only people with Andrew Ryan's genetic code can use them, but you're using them. But like you never really question that until you realize like, oh, you're Andrew Ryan's and then it clicks. But like
Yeah.
it's also like obvious in a way. But also like that audio log is totally optional and not at all on the main path.
Yeah, no.
So it's like it's just genius. The game is just created like brilliantly. Um, you know, where like the incentive, you know, yes, there is a gameplay incentive to explore because you get resources and stuff, but also like the incentive is like knowledge,
Yep.
which is like funny, but like really smart, you know?
And I think this game perpetually having different mysteries and questions that need to be answered make you want to seek out lore, and then along the way you learn all this other stuff and the world builds. This team really just knew what they were doing, dude. They just knew what they were doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. Every time, you know, the introduction sequence is so important for a game like this.
Absolutely.
Because you it has to sell you on the world in that first 15 minutes, or you're not going to care about finding the audio logs.
No.
And the introductory scene does this fantastically with the plasmid and the splicers and the big daddy and the little sister and Atlas and the murder scene. Even the environmental details, like you walk out of the bathysphere for the first time. We didn't even talk about this, but you see all the picket signs on the ground of people saying "Let us leave,"
Protesting, yep.
you know, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's just brilliantly done.
100%. I guess that leads to the question, out of 100, what are you giving this game, Mike?
I give Bioshock 1 a 93.
I'm going to give it a 90.
That's good. Yeah, I respect that.
What's your reasoning?
Um, my so the only reasoning it's not 100 uh is the hacking minigame is not great.
It's not. It's really not too.
It's basically a flow puzzle where you have to move pipes. We didn't even talk about it because it's like whatever.
It would have been cool
Um,
if there was like a couple hack mini games and that was one of them. But that's like the
yeah,
only
but no,
one.
you end up doing this mini game like over 100 times throughout the course of the game, and there's only like 6 or 7 different layouts for the puzzles,
Yeah.
so you just solve the same puzzle over and over again.
Yeah.
And it gets old really fast, and yeah, it's not a great mechanic.
Yeah.
Um, and the other reason is that the research system is like kind of ass with the camera,
Yeah, I have
like you, which I know you
literally
said
the
before.
exact same reasoning. The hacking and the photographing like research stuff, you end up having to do it a lot, and I felt like all the benefits from the research were just not worth like how boring taking the photos was. Like you kind of just want to kill stuff. I don't really want to study these splicers or big daddies. So I think those are just two game mechanics that had good concepts, but were just executed in a way that made them repetitive and not really fun to do. Like, I ended up just auto hacking stuff and then just not using the camera at all.
Yeah. No, the research is like it's okay. Like it's a cool concept and it's cool conceptually, and I like that it's tied into the game's objectives
Yeah.
in multiple parts. But the actual act of like having to basically take a picture of the same splicer 18 times so that you can research it um is just not fun.
Yeah.
And then the fact that film is like a limited resource that you have to go out of your way to get a lot of the time, which is like fine, but like it's not fun. It's not like a fun way to increase
Yeah.
your damage, you know.
But those
Um,
are really the only complaints I have
those are like
about
nitpicks,
Bioshock.
honestly, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Those are like nitpicks, and you know, if I those are like if I had to pick two things to complain about, like those would be the two things I complain about.
I agree.
So,
And I think when me and Mike were like set and ready to do this Bioshock podcast, we weren't really sure if we were gonna do all three games or just the one. But we're like an hour and a half in. I guess we just had a lot to say about Bioshock. I really didn't want to rush through this. So I guess
no.
we could just do a Bioshock 2 episode, either combine that with Infinite or just do a third one specifically about Infinite. Um,
Let us know in the comments what you want to see.
yeah, facts.
You know, let us know if you want to do if you want to see a whole episode on BioShock 2, because I have quite a bit to say about that game as well.
I do too, honestly. Yeah.
And yeah,
Infinite's a
no,
whole
I
can
know
of
this is
worms.
definitely a longer episode. But I really love BioShock. This is
Me
like one
too.
of the games that spawned my love for video games. Um, so I really just have a lot to say about it, and I never get tired of talking about it.
Facts.
So
Yeah, like I said, I just played this recently. It holds up well in the modern day, and it's literally top 5 for me now. Bioshock 1 is pretty just epic stuff. Good game. You should play it.
yeah, no, it's top 5 for me as well, and it's actually one of the reasons that I wanted to start this podcast in the first place was games like BioShock. So.
Yep. Anyway,
All right. Well, would you
yeah.
kindly give us the outro
Yeah.
that we all know and love,
The
the bit?
time for the iconic skill issue outro. We're gonna do it on the count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fortnite burger.
That's just an issue, a skill issue.
Fortnite burger.
Thanks for watching.